let me see. Alright, that cable goes here, that one there, I think. Oh, hello there. Please take a seat and make yourself comfortable. I'll be with you in a second. Just trying to get this thing up. I'm not very good with that newfangled computer stuff. There's a teapot on the counter if you want something to drink. Ah, there it is. Great. Okay then, so I think we can begin. As you know, my name is Michael Arthate, a bit of an ironic surname, considering my previous occupation. You probably don't know me, since my prime was way before most of you were even born, but nonetheless, I'm happy you're here. After all, what good is a story if it's not shared with people, right? And let me tell you, do I have a story to share? One that, if it happened to someone else, I would never believe. Anyways, I think we can start now, so sit back and listen. Oh, but one more thing. There will be some visual aids to help convey my story, and you might be wondering why I sound completely different in them. Truth is, the lovely people who made this thing decided that my current accent was not British enough and hired someone else to do the voice acting. True enough, I wasn't in England for several decades now, so I suppose it's for the best. Not that I care though, saved me a bit of work. But enough of that nonsense. Let us begin.
I arrived at Blackwood Manor one cold Saturday morning amidst a thick veil of fog. The weather didn't look good, and there was an unnatural calm surrounding the area, yet I soon became entangled with the place.
So, there I was, standing in front of a magnificent old house I have just bought with pretty much all of my life savings. It was cold, dark, and the sky itself had this otherworldly reddish color, so pretty much your typical Northumbrian morning, only that it wasn't raining. I got out of my car, and you can tell that it really was a long time ago, considering that the engine was in the back, not in the front, and for a while I just stood there in awe of the place. It was a perfect spot for doing some walk away from my loud apartment in London. Hell, nearest town was, 5-6 kilometers away? You couldn't even hear traffic on the main road, and the whole place just felt like a lone island in the middle of an ocean. Now, I kinda wanted to get unpacked, since I carried two unpleasantly heavy briefcases with me, but I was driving from London since 3 in the morning, so I decided to take a little walk around the grounds first, to stretch my legs and to see what's what. I tried the shed first, thinking that I could maybe park my car there, but it was locked with a heavy chain, something to be resolved later. Next, I passed a fountain, which was full of greenish, stale water, and went along the side path into the trees. I expected to just find some greenery there, maybe a bench or a gazebo or something, so you can imagine my surprise when I walked few steps down the overgrown path and found myself a full-on greenhouse, and a truly old-fashioned one at that, made out of metal and actual glass, not that mass-produced plastic nonsense they tend to use now. Sadly though, it was clear that no one was in it for decades now, because the doors were so rusted that trying to get them open was like trying to move a wall. Disappointing, but expected. So, I turned around and marched back towards the house, but being a human-shaped magpie with a very short attention span, I got distracted by a glint of light coming from the trees. I'm not really sure what I expected, but it was just a small pond right next to a dead tree. Nothing special, but then again it got me thinking, why exactly was the tree dead when it had all the water it needed? Mental note to self, do not drink pond water. Next, I explored another side path. This one moved alongside the house and vanished into yet another overgrown part of the garden, and this time, well, it turned out that the greenhouse wasn't the end of surprises, because the bloody place had a chapel. An actual stone chapel with a brass bell and stained glass windows, and let me tell you, the locals must really be a lazy bunch. Or there are no kids in nearby villages, because not one window was broken, even though the doors were locked shut. Back in London, kids would rob this place blind and turn it into a graffiti-covered crack den within hours. Still, by now I started to notice a bit of a pattern there. Namely, every single place I went to was locked, which is kind of to be expected. I mean, it would be far more disturbing if all doors were unlocked, don't you think? At least now I knew for sure that the place was not robbed, so I hauled myself back to the front yard, grabbed my stuff from under the fountain, and went in to see how my new home looked inside. Locked, of course, but I had a key, so I went in, fully expecting cobwebs and dust and ruin and desolation. Instead, I was welcomed by an amazing rustic interior that, as someone who lived in central London for his entire life, I generally associated with posh pre-war nobility. And then I had a heart attack. Bloody hell, it's easy to forget today just how loud these old telephones were, especially since I kept my current smartphone on silent mode for, what, 6 years now? Anyway.
Hello?
Michael, it's me.
Hey, Jerry. It's good to hear your voice.
I see that piece of junk you got there is working.
My thoughts exactly. I was afraid it'd fall apart as soon as I laid my fingers on it.
So how did you find everything? Do you like the place?
It's hard to tell yet. I'm very impressed, that's for sure.
You sound odd. Is everything okay?
Yes, it's perfectly fine. It's just that I'm in awe. I mean, pleasantly surprised. This house is like a dream come true.
So you do like it? You got me worried there for 1 second.
I'm telling you, I'm going to turn this place into a factory of horror stories.
Good. You ought to finish that book. I'm rooting for you, mate. You sure everything is in order?
Well, I just got here. Let me have a look around, and I'll get back to you if I find anything strange.
Excellent. I'll talk to you later.
Ah, good old Jerry. Bit of a dense bugger sometimes, but at the very least he's a friendly and loyal bugger. We went to high school together, and he was one of the very few people who kept in touch with me even before I got my moment in the spotlight, and all the cash that came with it. Oh, well, I guess I should explain that one, shouldn't I? See, I was kinda at the top of the world back then. Published my first book a few months back and it was a spectacular success. Got me a ton of acclaim and even more money, but it also came with a bit of a catch. See, write one good book and suddenly people expect that you'll continue to deliver, preferably on a regular, quick basis. And I wanted to. Really, I did. Wrote almost entirety of my second book, but then I hit a slump. I just had to figure out some ending for the whole story, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't think of a decent enough one. So, like every single newly rich twat with more money in my wallet than brain cells in my brain, I decided that wanton spending would solve the issue, and as a result, I ended with this house, the Blackwood Manor, hoping that living here, far away from crowds, would fill me with inspiration. Should have just done what all superstars do and buy myself a cargo container of cocaine, but oh well, I never said I was a smart man. Regardless, after talking to the man who pulled all the strings he could to get me this house, I went upstairs, unpacked my things, including my wickedly awesome typewriter, in my new room, which by the way was pretty awesome as well, with amazing view from the window, and went exploring my new humble abode. Nothing really humble about it though. As I said, to me this entire mansion looked like a cross between a museum, Buckingham Palace and a care house designed specifically for old nobility. Truth be told, I kinda fell out of place there without a frock coat, or at the very least without a tweed jacket and a monocle. My strong feelings of inadequacy were immediately silenced, however, in the very moment I entered the room located right next to mine. Expected some kind of a bedroom, but instead the place turned out to be a gallery of some sort, filled from top to bottom with pieces of African art. Took me by surprise at first, but then I remembered Jerry saying something about the original owner of this place, James Blackwood I think, being an engineer who walked in the colonies building some dams and railroads. Turns out the guy had a bit more personal interest in the place, given all the souvenirs he brought back. Wasn't really my thing though, so I instantly started thinking just how much money I could make selling these things to collectors or museums, but then I realized that by now all these things were probably protected by law or something. Blackwood must have brought them back in good old days, before or just after the war, when border control cared little about these kind of things. Now though, they would no doubt drown me in all that nonsense about cultural heritage or whatever and confiscate the stuff, so I decided to not dwell on it and moved on. After all, I still had plenty of house left to explore. And I have to say, the place really was pretty. Aside from African Gallery, my floor was nothing special. 2 bedrooms and a very dirty bathroom. But the ground floor, man, I could really see myself walking around with a pipe in my mouth, just enjoying the charm of this place. The main room had a fancy piano and a grandfather clock that you actually had to crank with your own hands, although I hoped that it wouldn't be too loud at night, because I can't imagine sleeping with it chiming every hour. Still, a lovely place to host a tea party, assuming, of course, that someone would actually bother to drive all this way just to get a cup of tea. Next to the main room was a study, and I immediately regretted not setting up my typewriter there. The place was just dripping class with full bookshelves, old maps, and a fancy desk that could make anyone sitting behind it look like a university professor. Whoever used this place must have been quite well-educated doctor, as the books were mostly medical treatises, with some law-focused and engineering-focused ones added to the mix. But, classy as it was also, well, boring, at least to me. Fortunately, the room also had a spinning globe, which I could use to distract all 3 of my brain cells. In front of the study, however, I found something that instantly made me think more fondly about the previous owner. The room itself was a dining hall with a really expensive-looking darkwood table and with an amazing view from a large window. But the main attraction was the cupboard, filled to the brim with various drinks. I mean, it's perfectly normal to have a bottle of scotch hidden away in a drawer somewhere, but this... well, if I had friends, we could throw a month-long party together, but since the only person I actually talked to was Jerry, I calculated that with proper use, we could use contents of that single cabinet to spend the next 3 decades without ever going sober. Still, thinking about all these drinks reminded me that it's been almost a day since I had anything to eat, so I made my way to what I hoped was kitchen. Wasn't expecting anything fresh there, not with the place being abandoned for years, but I expected that the place would have at least some canned food stocked. Sounds a bit odd, looking for decades-old food, but these old-school canneries used to really make their goods last forever. I remember back in school, Jerry and I found a can of strawberries from around 1880, and let me tell you, these were the best strawberries I had in my life. Unfortunately, the moment I entered the kitchen, I realized that lack of food was the least of my problems. The place was fragrant, to say the least, and I immediately noticed that the source of the smell was the fridge, which apparently housed some bones? Someone must have stocked some raw meat leftovers there, and they basically turned into a stinking pile of rot. Closed the fridge almost as quickly as I opened it, but it got me thinking, why exactly wasn't it working? I thought that maybe someone unplugged it, but the cable was in place and the switch was on. So, less enthusiastic about the whole affair with every passing second, I dragged myself to the wall and flicked the light switch. And, well, there was my problem. The place, as it seemed, had no power whatsoever, so no wonder the fridge was not working. Not ideal, but I dealt with issues like that back home every week, so I plotted course for the basement in order to check the fuses. Problem was, the basement was locked shut. And I admit, I let out a little stream of profanities there, growing increasingly impatient with all the locked doors in this place, but there was no way around it. Unless I wanted to spend the night in an empty manor in the middle of nowhere without light, I had to get down there, so I swallowed my frustration and got to work. Problem was, the bloody key was nowhere to be found. I scoured every single place in this home, from top to bottom, and found no clue as to where the thing could be. It was getting late, and I was no closer to a solution, so I started to just randomly check every single drawer I could find, and doing so revealed 3 things. 1. Previous inhabitants were probably suffering from serious alcohol issues, because there were scotch bottles scattered everywhere. 2. Jerry was full of shit when he said he hired a crew to fix the place up. 3. Not only there was no key, there were also no candles or any other source of light. I was just about to give up, but then I found a photo in a maid's bedroom. A photo, oddly enough, of the basement key. Okay, now, I know how it sounds, no sane person would take a picture like that, but after checking the secondary bathroom I realized that the maid must have been an amateur photographer, as the place was an improvised darkroom used to process camera film. So maybe she took this picture as a sort of training, I don't know. Regardless, the picture in question showed the key hanging above some vase, and in my search I saw a vase just like that, just outside of the kitchen. To be honest, I expected it to be full of spiders, but the key was indeed there, so I grabbed it, armed myself with a broom, to chase away rats that have no doubt annexed the place when it was abandoned, and went into the basement. I have to say, that basement was not a pleasant place. I found no rats, which was a good thing, but the whole basement was unnervingly chilly. One of the windows must have been broken somewhere because the wind was whistling down there like crazy. What's worse though, the fuses seemed to be working all right, though I have to say I am not an electrician, so who the hell knows. Still, after I left the basement, one thing started to feel odd. There was no power, as evidenced by lack of lights and stinking fridge, but in that case, why was the phone working? Was it on a separate power line? But no, that would have been ridiculous. I mean, Blackwood might have been a rich man, but I don't think he would spend all the money needed to plug his phone into a separate power grid. Even more so, doing something like that sounded a bit more, I don't know, strategically important. I could understand a local mayor or a police chief doing such a thing, but not some random fellow in the sticks. More importantly though, that did not matter. The important was that I was there, in the Blackwood Manor, on my own, without any source of light, and it was already too late to drive to town and buy some candles. So, resigned to my fate as an outcast lost forever away from civilization, I did the only sensible thing. I went to the dining room, opened the cabinet there, and drank a bottle of scotch in one go, and then topped it off with some absinthe I found in a drawer. Now if that wasn't a recipe for a sound night's sleep, then I have no idea what is. I heard about pounding hangovers, but I never thought they would actually be, well, pounding. Wait, no. That's not in my head, that's outside. Bloody hell, my neighbour must be at it again. Oi, Tom, stick that hammer up your ass, you mongoloid twat, and let people with actual jobs sleep. I swear to God I'm going to beat the hell out of that... Wait. I'm not at home. I'm in Northumberland. Alone. In a dark mansion. In the middle of the night. And I feel dangerously sober. But if I'm alone here, as we established, then who's doing all that banging? Ah, Jesus, my head. What the hell was that, a dream? Clearly I need another drink, so... Wait, what the hell is that sound? Ah, bugger me. This place has rats after all.